2A for all has come up recently in the gun world, and it's come up again as we've had a couple big events nationally that have people questioning whether certain minority groups should be allowed or even encouraged to own guns. And I want to talk about this today because it's actually a pretty big topic, and it's something that a lot of people get caught up on. And there's a few good points I think we can make. A very wise man once told me that your right to swing your fist ends at my face. What does that mean? Well, it means you can go crazy as long as you are, having a good time, mag dumping into trash, that kind of thing. But the second you point that at me, now we're gonna have a problem. There's one story, a children's story. We're gonna take it back to the classics here. It's like Trump reading the snake, but this is more interesting. And there's an old children's fable called The Little Red Hen. Basically, a hen goes around, asks people, hey, do you want to help me make this thing? She's cooking bread, I believe. All the animals say no, but when it's time to eat the bread, they say, hey, give me some. And the hen says, I don't think so. You didn't help make this at all, and now you just want to enjoy it. It kind of feels like the same thing with the left and gun rights. A lot of them are into AKs for whatever reason. A lot of them are into old weird guns because that's what they think is cool. But they have an ideology where, if carried out, will prevent most people from owning a lot of those things. Things they claim to enjoy. So there's a basic unbalance, right, between what they believe and who they vote for. And now this could also be defined as an imbalance in what their constituents believe and what politicians on that side enact. So one way or the other, that has to adjust. Either the politicians on the left have to start supporting gun rights more universally, or people on the left need to start voting for politicians who protect the things they care about and the things they want to use. And so the question there, too, is how much do they really care about these things? You will know them by their fruits, very important saying. So Matthew 7:16. And what does that basically mean? Well, it means to judge someone and their character, you can look at what they actually produce. And we can look at what left-wing and liberal politicians produce by looking at the states that they run, okay? We can do this with the internet, great invention. But if I go to look at right now, let's say my beloved M4 carbine from Colt, a true classic, has absolutely secured its place in American history. This item cannot ship to Alaska. It's kind of surprising with the outdoors there. California, Colorado, Connecticut, the District of Columbia, Delaware, Hawaii, which has a fake culture, I heard, Illinois, Massachusetts, Maryland, New Jersey, very annoying people from New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Washington. So whenever I go there to look at something I think is cool, like, okay, this is kind of a cool gun, I'm just shocked to see how much that list has grown over recent years. These are people in a large portion of our country, a pretty big population, they can't enjoy the same basic freedoms I do, and it's because they have elected left-leaning, or you could call them Marxist or other things, type of officials in power. You want another quick example? We can do one, sure. Here's the KCI Hundo True Freedom right here. Cannot ship to California, Colorado, Connecticut, DC, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Massachusetts, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, or Washington. So how free are we really? Oregon's still okay for all the Oregonian gun tubers there. And I get a lot of views from California. It's one of our highest viewed states, along with Texas, Florida, and others. And the Californians just have to put up with so much. I feel kind of bad for them. There was a portion of time in the last few years where it seems like every week we'd get some sort of breaking news or update on Californians like trying to claw their rights back. And it's like, I look at that from my state, and I'm like, wow, you guys couldn't do that before? You couldn't do it? That's pretty interesting. I don't know. I don't know what's stopping the criminals from going to a neighboring state, right, and getting that stuff. But if you want to follow the law, you can't get basic things, and you have these goofy guns. I feel really bad for the Californians, and And so it's kind of like just move, right? But then also people are leading the fight to try to take back. They say, please, can we have our rights back in our own state? And it's just is not intended to be that way. Why is it important for us to have unfettered access to small arms, especially along with others? Is because our government envisioned this as a check and balance on power, on tyranny, and also other nation states as well, necessary for the security of a free state. Free state is the key word there. What does a free state mean? It means you're free to sit on the bus without getting stabbed. It means you're free to enjoy life in your country and not worry about getting invaded by foreigners. It means you're free to raise a family peacefully. And so an armed society is a polite society in that way. A lot of people don't understand this. I heard one... I'll tell you why it's important. It has to do with Europe, spoiler alert, but I've heard some awful boomer takes on this. You know, one of these things I was listening to, a older gal, probably not a viewer of this channel, said, well, you know, in this one case where there was a school incident, the cops didn't do anything. They didn't go in for a long time. And I'm sure all of you know which one I'm talking about. There's cops that view this channel that would look at that other department and say, wow, those guys were cowardly. I would have gone right in. And I know they would have. So those cops gave everyone a bad name. And then the libs watching that, I saw them use this to say, oh, see, that means there's no such thing as a good guy with a gun. So there's no reason to have them. And it just really pissed me off to no end, because this is the exact reason why we do need more good people to have guns and be armed, because unfortunately you can't always rely on the people who respond to do the job. In fact, they are there to respond. They're not there to stop things before they happen. The first responder to a tragic event involving your life will always be you by definition. So you better be armed. If you're watching this channel as a male in the United States and you have the option to be armed, there is no excuse, in my opinion, for you not to exercise that right anymore. There's just no excuse. We don't live in that world where we can just be blissful and say, this isn't really a requirement for me. So I encourage all the young or older men who are watching this right now to exercise that right and fulfill your role as the defenders of civilization that you were born to be, just like our founders did intend. And so the other reason of why we need to stay as armed as possible is that principle of equal pushback against bad people. The bad people we see and read about in the news for the past few weeks, it seems like there's been one every week, they are going to places where they're not expecting pushback. It's a cowardly act, right? It's a sucker punch. It's a situation where they're inserting themselves into where they don't expect fire coming back. But if they did, I guarantee you they wouldn't be going there. So that's part of the reason we need to stay so vigilantly armed, and to the extent that the left supports politicians that would disarm us, they should cease doing so. The other reason, too, is we are, I think, so vastly, possibly, although possibly not, outmatched in terms of what our own government is capable of, just in terms of surveillance, in terms of listening to people. We've never really seen such an imbalance where theoretically the guys holding the keys of power could use it to destroy our lives. And I know there's checks and balances in place, and there's good people in place that would hopefully prevent that happening. But you wonder if the events that led up to the birth of our nation today could indeed take place. I'm not advocating for that. I think we should reform our government. But it is such a huge imbalance of power, especially considering all the advancements in technology that the military has made in the past 100 years. They have tremendous weapons. Weapons of war, they call them. They have nukes. They have all kinds of things. You know, ask the people of Japan how they liked that. It was a horrible tragedy. One, I think we're still reeling and seeing the effects from. But that, in a sense, that ended the war because there was not a desire to continue seeing that happen. It was really by sheer luck that we developed that first. And the reason we have so many and other nations have so many, and the reason that the world doesn't look like a GTA PvP server, is because there is an unspoken law of if you hurt someone, you will face consequences for that on the national level, and there should be on the personal level as well. A lot of times these thugs, these criminals, like I said, feel they can get away with it because they feel they are armed and you are not. And sometimes they find out. We see them find out really quickly. They escalated on the FAFO scale. But there are just so many more tools that our military has that we as civilians don't. I remember the story of there was a guy in the Midwest who was buying up, I believe, used helicopter parts. He was trying to put together a chopper of his own. And he got a call from the government. They said, "Hey, what are you doing? We just want to check on you." And I think he said, "Well, I'm just building a helicopter," and they left him alone. They're like, "Okay, he's just a super autist. He just wants to build this together." But there was that, the fact that there was even that need of like, "Oh, hey, we have to check on you to see what you're doing." Meanwhile, there's thousands, hundreds of thousands in our military's fleet. And we kind of laugh when we see clips going around Twitter right now of like libs getting owned by DHS. But what if in the next 4 years, okay, it's a different government. We're looking at clips right now under the Trump government. He was elected with a huge mandate to fulfill our will. And then what if in 4 years it's not something like libs getting epic owned? What if it's something like, hey, you can't go to church anymore because we declared another emergency or something? In that case, what can we do? Well, the only way we as civilians stand a chance is by banding together. And part of that saying, okay, it's left versus right, which I realize we're doing to some extent in this video. But this type of division actually helps those who are very, very powerful. People who do not live lives comparable to you and I at all. They will never touch a plastic straw. They'll never grab their own bag. These people live in a completely different life. And it helps them when we fight amongst ourselves and amongst each other. And part of that is they need to keep you divided because in some level, in some way, they do not want you to know your own power. Okay, we are kind of in a coddled state right now. As a nation, we can look at entertainment on our phones anytime. We can look at entertainment on the internet through a variety of devices. Not so much TV anymore. They're losing their control there. But we are still very much a coddled nation in the sense that we, for the most part, have somewhat easy lives. And except for certain instances, many people will not see the need to even call or contact their representatives to express an opinion. I would be curious how many of you watching have done this. I've done it myself several times. It's very easy, actually. It's a thing you're supposed to do as a citizen. You should express what you feel. There are numbers set up and people sitting at a desk right now, maybe not right now if it's late at night, but staffed 24/7 to pick up the phone and say, "Yes, sir, please tell me your opinion, what you think about this, and I'll pass it on to the representative." You guys can find that contact information online very easily. I'll link it below. But I don't think people realize how much you vote for or implicitly approve things just by living your day-to-day life. You're voting for something every time you swipe your debit card. You're voting for your company and your boss when you show up to work there and make the money. And you're voting for the system you live in when you comply with and follow its orders. Now, I'm not saying break the law or anything crazy. I'm just pointing out how things work. And if you don't think the government is terrified of a few of you getting together and ever trying anything, well, just take a look at what happened to the people who dared enter, although they were a little rowdy, the Capitol building in January. There was a certain date that I'm sure you guys all know about. And they made an example of those people like no tomorrow. They were starved. They were beaten in their cells, according to accounts. Many of them not getting justice. And then and then we won and Trump came in and said, "You know what, get them all out of here." And they all went home. That wouldn't have happened if it was Kamala or Gavin or whoever else they come up with. I guarantee you those people would still be held in the same way as political prisoners. But the reason they decided to clamp down on them so hard is they wanted to scare you out of ever thinking of doing anything like that again. I promise the government lives in fear of you. They always are talking about, well, what if these crazy right-wingers do this? What if they do that? And they characterize you in certain ways. And this is not from my experience in the government. This is just from at an organizational level. Large liberal organizations fear the same thing. Okay, that's why they have security. That's why they have certain things. And now none of us will do anything on the right because we're a peaceful people. We are not like the left. We feel like we can win in the marketplace of ideas. And I'll say most of the left because I don't think most of the left supports murdering innocent people. At least I sure hope they don't. I hope the trans community will disavow certain things that have happened lately. And I hope the black community will disavow certain things that have happened as well. Certainly, killing innocent people is wrong. I should maybe have said that at the beginning, just to clarify. We'll make sure everyone knows that. But no, that's obviously wrong. And we don't resort to that because we believe we have better ideas. We believe we can win you over by discussing them. But it's getting harder to do that in a country that is so divided by our media. And we need to address this here. We need to hold the media accountable for this. They have, for the last 10 or 15 years, possibly 20 years, run unchecked and used all of their power to push divisive, unity-shattering, non-cohesive stories about us versus them. And the reason you hear about LGBT and weed every 4 years is because they know these topics will divide people. Most people, it's not even a thing you think about in your daily life, but here comes the media to remind you that these wedge issues exist like clockwork every 2 to 4 years. And they have used that power unchecked. And by the way, it's running out. The power's running out quickly. But if you watch the nightly news today, you'll get stories about how people dressed in camo are very scary. It's a totally different world. It's normie world I visited lately. And it is like a completely different world to what we experience online and what you experience. The nightly news, and they know exactly what they're doing, in my opinion. And it's to benefit them. You know, if you keep fighting right versus left, that prevents you from really asking the important questions like, hey, who is actually in power in our country? Who are our actions benefiting? And what should we do actually to ensure a better life for the future of Americans, our people? A sign of intelligence is being able to place yourselves in the other person's shoes. And as a thinking exercise, we can think about, hey, what would happen if millions of Americans decided to go together and visit Bangladesh or visit India? What would happen? Well, if we all, millions of us, decided to go over there, I'm sure we would establish our own little area in that space that is familiar and comfortable to us. We would bring our culture with, and we would build a little space that we're used to, and we would start voting for policies. We would start running for things, and we would start voting for officials who are going to help us as a people. If for whatever reason we wanted to go over to that country, I don't think most of you want to go scuba diving in trash. I mean, unless you're visiting there's like a beautiful landscape, maybe that's what you're going for. So think about that in the reverse. Think about these big companies telling you on the left and on the right that we need to import infinity people to help our GDP, to help our economy. You know, one thing that stuck with me that I've heard is that the GDP has tripled since the 90s. Has your life gotten 3 times better? I don't think it has. You know, guys, at the end of the day, an addiction to money and spending is a corrupt, is a sinful lifestyle. You were not put on this earth to make as much money as possible. You were not born into this nation, and America was not made to be an economic experiment. We did not found America to make money and be profitable. We founded it to be free and choose our own destiny away from a foreign government's influence, by the way. And that was over a very little percent with the taxes and the tea and everything. So at the end of the day, does the left deserve to a rights? Does the Second Amendment apply to everyone? Well, if you move here and pop out a baby, I don't think that's who the founders had in mind as like everyone, unless you share a lot with our culture. And yes, that does mean that you are compatible with American society. We were actually not founded to be a quote-unquote melting pot. And by the way, I'll remind you of what happens to individuals in a melting pot. They die and blend together and cease to exist. They get made into something else if you truly melt. So we need to reject that ideology. And to the extent that my fellow Americans would like to be armed and exercise that right, I welcome that, because I think the more Americans we have armed and capable, I think the less likely it is any other country would ever think to try something. I do think that that is a real threat. We have not had that happen physically thus far, but it could always be something that's encouraged around the corner. And we need to maintain the sanctity and security of our people and our ability to choose our own destiny. Part of that is having a very well-armed and capable public. And ultimately, the government is elected to follow our will. So if people on the left are continuing to support politicians that do not support this idea, they should remove that support. They should not win elections anymore. That goes for anyone who would put other countries or other people's interests above our own. And so are guns scary to some people? They are, because they're afraid that bad people are going to use them against themselves. To that I say there is no way to uninvent technology. You cannot remove progress, so your best bet in that case, lady, is to arm up yourself, and plenty of people do that. And ultimately, in a homogenous, aligned society, we should not need to leave the house packing, okay? But the criminal element exists for various reasons. It goes back to broken families and broken homes, and that comes from a lack of morals itself and charter and character, which is a whole other conversation. So bad people do exist in our world, unfortunately. And you, as a man watching this, even if you're a liberal, even if you're a left-leaning man, you have the responsibility to protect those close to you, your loved ones, your women, the women and the children. We have the best women. But seriously, that is your responsibility. And, to people who want to get super reactionary about this, I saw this tweet on Twitter. It was of black people training, and they had issue with the hat this guy was wearing. And I just said, okay, really? I mean, now I understand the argument of what the hat represents, okay? I'll say that's not lost on me. But are we really to the point where we look at a hat and get scared? I'm not scared of, he can have whatever he wants on that hat. I'll have whatever I want on my hat. We have better hats, by the way. And I'm not really scared until that muzzle starts aiming at me, and you better believe there will be a response, okay? So I'm not concerned about, I don't think we need to police. Well, what is the exact ideology of what people believe? People are going to have different ideologies, and we debate them in public to find the best way to lead all of our people forward. That's what the founders envisioned, okay? I would rather have more people on all sides armed just to strengthen our country as a whole. So I don't think we need to start applying the test of, hey, what exactly do you believe before we hand you this gun? Because then where does the line get drawn of, okay, do you believe this? Do you believe that? Will you vote for infinity workers to come in so we can give more tax dollars away? Where does the line get drawn? No, it should be as much unfettered access as possible. And all of my fellow Americans across the United States should be able to own exactly what I do as well. I'm not scared about these other people having access to it because I have one myself and can use it if needed. I actually train with it, or I try to. We try to get pretty good. So the question we posed is 2A for everyone. It's for every American. Okay? And we need to remember that there are far many more of us as citizens than there are people leading us, the government. In fact, we give them permission to lead us through our consent via voting to enact our will. This doesn't mean you have to like people who you disagree with politically, but you should also keep in mind we are not truly that far apart on either side. Now, can radical ideologies be dangerous when left unchecked? Absolutely. What's the first thing they do when they try to enact something awful like that? Well, they try to take the people's guns. Why do they take the guns? It's so they can do whatever they want to you and you can't meaningfully resist. They know you can't resist in places like Europe. So I guess we'll talk about this now. The reason they can send people door to door to check on the tweets your daughter looked at is because they know you have no serious way of resisting. You are a disarmed populace. And I know we have some people watching from across the ocean. They do whatever they want to you and try to bring in infinity migrants and try to police what you are actually allowed to say because they know there's no real meaningful way for you to fight back, and that's a shame. Now, as technology continues to proliferate, maybe that will change. But by the way, take a look at what they did in Australia during the COVID lockdowns. Was not a great time to be there, and you could say that was a failure of our people as well. We kind of went along with it. I think most of us got our freedom back, but it was still a long, difficult battle. And part of that was because of the stranglehold-like grasp they had on the messaging. They told people, if you do this, you're a killer, you're a murderer. And that really wasn't the case at all. Now we are in a space where our communication is a little more free, and that's very threatening to some people, even though it shouldn't be. We should all seek truth no matter where it leads. So we'll see what happens, boys and girls. Don't forget the power you have when you stick together. If you doubt this, take a look at Canada. They did something with the truckers, the trucks. And they tried to fight back. You know, the people in power used their schemes and their ideas to try to mess with people in a way that's non-physical. They tried to shut down their purchasing power, their bank accounts. But ultimately, I believe the truckers won. And then people like Jordan Peterson came out right on cue and said, okay, now dial it back now. You've got what you wanted. Don't push too far. Which is just completely retarded, which is a state-sponsored message, in my opinion. So don't forget what you are capable of. The reason they don't let people criticize China and talk about tofu drag construction, among other things, is because it causes people to start thinking for themselves and think, maybe this system that we're under isn't what's best for us. And that's a dangerous idea. We use our rights right now to change the system that governs us via voting, and we want to continue doing that. Guys, make sure that you vote for people who respect your true freedom and rights. And to those on the left, please make sure you vote for people who will actually protect your freedoms. I know not all candidates are perfect, especially those on the right and left. But that's all I've got to say for now. I think we've stirred the pot enough. Guys, let me know what you think down below. We will get into it. Make sure you bring some facts, because we'll get into it in a little bit. We'll have some fun. Let me know what you guys think, guys. Make sure you get out there and train, practice, carry a reliable gun. I'll see you in the next video. Got nothing else for you.
When the time's right, Corporal. When the time's right.